On a cold February evening in 1933, the quiet French town of Le Mans was shaken by a horrifying discovery. Two prominent citizens, Madame Lancelin and her daughter Geneviève, were found brutally murdered in their own home. The scene was shocking: blood-splattered walls, mutilated bodies, and an atmosphere thick with the stench of violence. But even more unsettling was the identity of the prime suspects, the family's live-in maids, Christine and Léa Papin. The Papin sisters, quiet and seemingly unremarkable, had lived and worked in the Lancelin household for years. They were known for their diligence and efficiency, blending into the background of the bourgeois home. No one suspected the simmering rage that lay beneath their placid exteriors. The murders sent shockwaves through France, becoming a morbid spectacle that captivated the nation. How could two seemingly ordinary women commit such a horrific act? The case of the Papin sisters would become a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives. Christine and Léa Papin were born into a world of poverty and hardship. Their early years were spent in a small, impoverished village in France or security. Their childhood was marked by instability, neglect, and a domineering mother who instilled in them a deep sense of inadequacy and resentment. Their mother, Clémence, was a stern and unloving figure whose harsh discipline and emotional coldness left deep scars on the young girls. She was often overwhelmed by the demands of raising her children alone, and her frustration frequently manifested in anger and harsh punishments. Their father, Gustave, an alcoholic and alleged abuser, abandoned the family early on, leaving the sisters to navigate a world that seemed determined to break them. His departure only added to the instability of their lives, and the absence of a father figure left a void that was never filled. The sisters were left to fend for themselves in a society that offered little support for children in their situation. Their mother, unable to cope with the demands of raising her children alone, sent Christine to live with an aunt, separating the sisters at a young age. This separation was a traumatic experience for both girls, who had already endured so much hardship. Christine's new home was not much better than the one she had left, and she continued to face neglect and mistreatment. This separation had a profound impact on their relationship, forging an intense, almost claustrophobic bond that would define their lives. The sisters longed to be reunited, and their letters to each other were filled with expressions of love and longing. When they were finally brought back together, their bond was stronger than ever, and they became inseparable. When they were finally reunited, they clung to each other fiercely, finding solace and security in their shared isolation. It became the central focus of their lives, and they relied on each other for emotional support and companionship. In a world that had shown them little kindness, their bond was a source of strength and comfort. Their lives were a relentless cycle of menial jobs and harsh mistresses, each experience reinforcing their sense of powerlessness and resentment towards the bourgeois class they served. The sisters worked as maids in various households, where they were often treated with disdain and subjected to grueling labor. Their employers saw them as little more than tools to be used and discarded, and the sisters' resentment grew with each passing day. They found themselves trapped in a system that offered them little hope for advancement or escape. The rigid class structure of early 20th century France left little room for social mobility, and the sisters' lack of education and resources made it nearly impossible for them to improve their situation. They were caught in a cycle of poverty and exploitation with no clear way out. The sisters, bound together by their shared history and their unspoken rage, retreated further into their own private world. Their bond became a refuge from the harsh realities of their lives, and they found solace in each other's company. However, their intense relationship also had a darker side, as their shared anger and resentment began to fester and grow. The sisters' isolation and mutual dependence created a volatile dynamic that would eventually lead to a tragic and violent conclusion. The events leading up to the murders remain shrouded in mystery, pieced together from fragmented testimonies and speculation. The story is a patchwork of conflicting accounts, each adding a layer of complexity to the already convoluted narrative. What is known is that on that fateful evening, a seemingly insignificant argument sparked a terrifying chain of events. The tension in the household had been simmering for years, and it only took a minor spark to ignite the powder keg. Some accounts suggest a disagreement over a faulty iron, a symbol of the mundane tasks that bound the sisters to their servile existence. This iron, a simple household appliance, became the focal point of their pent-up frustrations. Others point to a deeper well of resentment, years of suppressed anger finally boiling over into violence. The sisters had long felt trapped in their roles, their dreams and desires stifled by the rigid social structure of the time. Whatever the trigger, the sisters' rage, once unleashed, was swift and merciless. It was as if a dam had burst, releasing a torrent of fury that had been building up for years. They turned on their employers with a brutality that shocked even the most hardened investigators. The scene that greeted the police was one of unimaginable horror, a testament to the depth of the sisters' rage. Madame Lancelin, the first victim, was blinded in one eye before being brutally beaten. Her screams echoed through the house, a chilling prelude to the violence that was to come. Geneviève, her daughter, met a similarly gruesome end, her face and body bearing the brunt of the sisters' fury. The violence inflicted upon her was not just physical, but also deeply personal, a manifestation of the sisters' long-held grievances. The violence of the act, its sheer ferocity, suggested a deep-seated rage, a need to inflict pain that went far beyond a simple argument. It was as if the sisters were exorcising their demons, using their employers as unwilling vessels. The sisters, fueled by years of unspoken resentment and fueled by their shared psychosis, had finally snapped, unleashing their fury on the symbols of their oppression. Their actions were not just a crime, but a desperate cry for liberation from their servitude. The bloodbath that unfolded in the Lancelin household that night would forever stain the sisters' lives and cement their place in the annals of criminal history. The house, once a symbol of domestic order, became a macabre monument to the sisters' rage and desperation. The trial that followed was a media sensation, drawing crowds and sparking debates about the nature of servitude and mental illness. The sisters' defense hinged on their mental state, arguing that years of mistreatment had driven them to madness. Public opinion was divided, with some seeing the sisters as victims of a cruel system, while others viewed them as cold-blooded killers. The case became a lightning rod for discussions about class, power, and the human psyche. Ultimately, the sisters were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Their story, however, continued to haunt the public imagination, a grim reminder of the potential for violence lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. The legacy of the Lancelin murders endures, a chilling example of how ordinary lives can be shattered by extraordinary violence. The sisters' tale serves as a cautionary story about the dangers of repression and the explosive power of unaddressed grievances. Today, the Lancelin house stands as a somber reminder of that fateful night, a place where the past and present intersect, forever marked by the bloodshed that occurred within its walls. The murders sent shockwaves through France, igniting a firestorm of speculation and debate. The nation was gripped by the gruesome details, and the media coverage only intensified the public's fascination. Newspapers were filled with sensational headlines, and people gathered in cafes and public squares to discuss the latest developments. The case became a national obsession, with everyone from intellectuals to ordinary citizens weighing in with their opinions. How could two seemingly ordinary women commit such a horrific act? The Papin sisters, Christine and Leah, were not known for any violent tendencies. They were quiet, diligent workers who had served their employers faithfully for years. Their sudden transformation into brutal murderers was both shocking and incomprehensible to those who knew them. Theories abounded, ranging from the psychological to the sociological. Scholars and experts from various fields offered their interpretations, each trying to make sense of the inexplicable. Some delved into the sisters' past, looking for clues in their upbringing and family dynamics. Others examined the broader social and economic context, seeking to understand how such an event could occur in a supposedly civilized society. Some experts pointed to folie à deux, a shared psychosis, arguing that the sisters' intense, isolated relationship had created a delusional reality where violence became an acceptable solution. This theory suggested that the sisters' close bond had become pathological, leading them to lose touch with reality. Their isolation from the outside world may have exacerbated their condition, making it easier for them to retreat into a shared delusion. Others suggested the murders were a class-driven act of rebellion, a violent uprising against the perceived injustices of the bourgeois system. The Papin sisters, as domestic servants, were part of a marginalized and exploited class. Their act of violence could be seen as a desperate attempt to assert their humanity and resist their dehumanizing conditions. This interpretation resonated with the growing labor movement and the increasing awareness of social inequalities in early 20th century France. The sisters, trapped in a cycle of poverty and servitude, may have seen their employers as embodiments of their own oppression, making them easy targets for their pent-up rage. The hierarchical nature of the employer-employee relationship, with its inherent power imbalances, may have contributed to the sisters' sense of frustration and helplessness. Their violent outbursts could be interpreted as a tragic consequence of their repressed anger and despair. The case became a Rorschach test for French society, reflecting anxieties about class, gender, and the very nature of madness. It forced people to confront uncomfortable questions about the social order and the treatment of the marginalized. The fact that the perpetrators were women added another layer of complexity, challenging traditional gender roles and expectations. The fact that two women, traditionally seen as the gentler sex, could commit such a brutal act challenged deeply held societal norms and fueled a sense of unease. Women were expected to be nurturing and passive, not capable of such extreme violence. The Papin sisters' actions shattered these stereotypes, forcing society to re-evaluate its assumptions about gender and behavior. The Papin sisters, once invisible in their quiet servitude, became lightning rods for a nation grappling with its own internal demons. Their story highlighted the deep-seated issues of class inequality, gender expectations, and mental health that plagued French society. The case remains a haunting reminder of the complexities of human behavior and the dark undercurrents that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life.